Three, two, one. Hey, family, how are you? I am excited to be back with our second rendition of our family story. And so, Bulu, Pina, our story, not his story, her story, our story. And we have the historian in the family back for a second rendition. And so we talked a lot. And I did listen to the show that we had before. And there's a lot in there, but there's also a lot that's missing, and I had so many questions while watching. And so I guess many of the questions that I have will probably be.
Maybe we can go that way. Maybe you could address questions.
We will be zigzagging through history. So today you wanted to go a little bit further into the family, into Detta specifically, right?
Yeah, I thought, hello, family. I'm so glad that you decided to tune back in so that you can learn about our legacy of our ancestors. And last time that we were on, I kind of did a quick introduction of who the Bulus are, introduced you to Mapa and the children, their 6 children. We talked a little bit about how Detta, also known as Pa Bulu, came to the U.S., and how he bought the land with the cousins in Duxbury. And today wanted to spend a little time talking about the Bulu family that is still in Cape Verde, and what I was able to find when I went to Cape Verde in 2019. And then hopefully today, if we have time, we'll touch a little bit about Ma's family. She was the Fernandez side.
Let's do her next time, because I do want to. Okay. I want her to have her own time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where we're going on this journey. So today we'll do a little deeper dive into the Bulus from Fogo, and then the next time we do a segment, we'll concentrate on the Fernandez side of the family, which is Ma Bulu's side.
Can we pull up again the different definitions? Oh no, because I did that on my phone, right?
Yes.
Oh. Yes. So, Bulu name meaning. And so I just thought it was important for us to know like the history of it, even though we really don't know what how the history. And whenever Cape Verdeans like, oh, what's your last name? I'm like, we're the Bulus. They were like, what? Okay? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. So,
and I think that's really what drove me to go to Cape Verde, is to find out how did we get the Bulu name, because Bulu is not a traditional Cape Verdean name. Mm-hmm. And so I went all the way to Cape Verde in 2019 to do some more research on Pa Bulu's family. And even today, we still don't know how our family ended up with the Bulu name.
And that's even said the family that's back there now.
Yes.
And we do have Bulus that are still in Cape Verde, right?
We do. And so today I wanted to try to introduce you to some of the Bulu family that I met when I was there. But I did want to at least to share what our lineage is, because I think, so Pa Bulu he was one of 8. So what I did find out when I went to Cape Verde and did the research is that he did have other brothers and sisters that we were not aware of. And so we are actually descendants of Jose de Pina and Cecilia Francisca Bulu. Those are Pa Bulu's mother and father. Mm-hmm. And they had the 8 children. And they were actually on the island of Fogo. We do know that our that side of the family, they are from Fogo. They had 8 children. The oldest was called Marcelina, and she was born September 1981. Then there was Anna, they always went by Pina Bulu, which meant of Pina. And the reason why is because Pina is from what I can tell, is our original name. We are Pina. And then Bulu somehow got attached to Pa Bulu's father.
And so
Prior
not
to
the
that, they
Pina,
were all
just
Pina.
Pinas.
No, in Cape Verde, they always put the da Pina, which meant of, either the DE or the DA, da. Either da or da meant of. You could have this de Vegas. They just, and when they got to the US, they dropped it. So they just became Vegas or Pinas or whatever. But for over there, they do use the da Pina.
And so, you said Joaquim?
Jose
Fernandez?
No. Jose de Pina Bulu is Pa Bulu's father.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking at Anna.
You're looking at the
So this is where we're focused on today.
Yes.
And Cecilia F. Bulu, who's also named after my grandmother, your mom.
That's right. So my mother was named after Pa Bulu's mother. And Uncle Joe was named after his father.
Okay.
Because his father was
Jose.
They call it Jose.
Jose.
And that translates to Joseph in English.
Okay.
So Uncle Joe is Joseph Pina. So anyway, so we're actually going back to, we're going to go and get introduced to Pa Bulu's family, his mother, his father.
Okay.
Jose de Pina Bulu, his mother was Cecilia Fonseca Bulu. So we're also related to Fonsecas.
Okay.
On that side. So and then their 8 children was Marcelina de Pina Bulu, born in 1881. Then Anna de Pina Bulu, she was born in 1886. Now, we called her Auntie Anna. She came to the U.S. and with her husband. His name was Christian Perry. And that's how we get the relation to the Perrys. And they actually settled in the area of Duxbury. I believe it was on Temple Street or West Street, over there where all the other Pinas were. The Perrys, I'm sorry. Mary Perry, Stella Perry, Dave Perry, all of them over there. So,
but we're not related to those Perrys.
I believe through Auntie Anna, through Pa Bulu's sister Anna, who married a Perry. I believe that's where that
comes from.
And if we're not blood related, then we're related through marriage.
Okay, so Cecilia Fonseca Bulu was born in Cape Verde and was the child of Anna. No?
Yeah, well, yes. So Auntie Anna had a daughter, and she named her Cecilia.
Okay.
That's getting confusing.
It is. That's super confusing.
So we're going to stick with the siblings. So again, Dada had a sister Marcelina, then Anna, that came to the U.S. He had a brother that was named Francisco, and he was born in 1887. I had never heard of Francisco. They probably called him Frank, but I had never heard of this brother. And when I was visiting with Auntie Mary last week, she told me that, no, she had never heard of Francisco either. She had never heard of Francisco.
But she told you something else, though. We'll hear that one later.
Yeah, right. But Francisco did come to the U.S., but we never met him. And then Pa Bulu, whose first name is Domingo, he was born in 1889. So he was actually the 4th child. And then after Pa Bulu was another girl. Her name was Adelina. She was born in 1893. And then after her were the twins. So there were twin boys that were born, Horonado and Horacio. And they were born June 17th, 1896. And June 17th is Auntie Anna's birthday. So I thought that was pretty amazing. One of the twins did come to the U.S., and that was, we called him Norad. He was my mother's godfather. and he actually lived in Connecticut for a long time.
Did you meet him?
I did. He was I have a picture. I just sent you his picture. He was very handsome, very distinguished looking, and he would always travel back and forth to Cape Verde. So,
and is that Pa's brother?
Coronado.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. So
brother.
let's switch screens.
And Coronado, or Norada as we called him, he never had any children.
Never?
No, he had no children. He did marry.
He was handsome, though.
He was very, very handsome. Very distinguished, had that white hair. I have to say that is a trait within Bulu's in our family. On the Bulu side, it's the gray hair.
Too bad I didn't get any.
Well. And then the last sibling was Constancia. She was born in 1898. And so that is all of Pa's brothers and sisters in the years that they were born. And
so to go down the list again, it's Domingo Pina Bulu is our grandfather. Your grandfather, my great-grandfather, my kid's great-great-grandfather.
And the one to come here from Cape Verde.
Okay. He had 7 children, and it was Marcelina, Anna, Francisco, Adelina, Horatio, and Jornato, and Constancia. Okay. And this is the great-grandfather.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I did find when I went to Cape Verde is that the part of Fogo that they lived was called Cutelo.
Okay.
And this is probably about a 20-minute car ride from the downtown area of Fogo. I'm trying to think, what is the downtown called? Okay, I can't remember. But anyways, so they weren't that far from the main, we'll call it the township. So they weren't too far out from, but they were far enough outside of the city limits where they were farmers. It was very rural there. They lived off the land and had goats and chickens and so on. So a lot of what we see when we go to Duxbury and we go on the farm, that's pretty much what it was like in Fogo. Very much open space, a lot of greenery and agriculture. So that's really the foundation of our family. They weren't fishermen, they were farmers. So when I did go to Cape Verde, and I actually had to use a translator because I did not speak Creole, we were able to find a Pina Bulu family. And as it turned out, this family was a direct descendant of our grandfather. And that is do you have the picture of that? The 3, I think there's like 3 men.
3 men.
And the way we found out was I had a picture of Pa when he was young, and trying to show that picture. Everybody knew about the twins, so I knew I had identified the right family, because you have to realize back in the early 1900s, twins were quite rare. And so they all knew about the twins, Pa's brothers that were twins. So I knew that I had identified our family. And his mother, her name was Constancia. His grandmother was Constancia. who was Pa Bulu's youngest sister. So in order to find family in the U.S. that could speak English and hopefully fill me in, we were able to find Constantia's other grandson, and his name is Nicholas.
And we have a picture of Nicholas now. The one with other cousins in a green shirt and the red and white shirt. Mm-hmm. And who is this beautiful woman?
Okay, the first person, his name is he's Jose de Pina Bulu.
That's the one in the green shirt?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And next to him is his wife. And the other two men are his brothers.
Okay.
And then you have Nicholas. You know who Nicholas
yes.
is. So you can, I don't know what shirt color.
It's like a gray or a really light blue.
Right.
What's crazy is looking at this picture, and I want to zoom in, and you guys tell me who you see in these faces. So as far as head shape, this one has the head shape of Titi, and many of you know him as Uncle Tommy, who lived at the farm. But this face is like Titi's face as he got older. Very much like the brother who's standing right behind.
Yes.
Nickel. He looks like my uncle.
Yes. You can see the family. It was so interesting to see the family resemblance. There is also another picture that I sent Uncle Gusto, I call him. He is Constancia's son. Mm-hmm. So he would be first cousins to like Auntie May and Auntie Frances and my mother. And his daughter lives here in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and he happened to be here from Cape Verde visiting, and I was able to go and visit with him. And again, he didn't speak any English, but you know, when you see family, you just relate. You see the older picture?
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see if I can put Titi in the frame, and I'm gonna pull the picture back up. I want you to just look at that face, look at the head shape. I'm gonna pull the picture back up. You guys can see, hopefully you can see what I see. Tell me if you see the same thing I'm seeing. And this picture.
Oh, okay.
Who was in that picture? So
this is a picture I think I got from Auntie Mary or even I don't really know. I had never seen this picture, but this was the picture that I took with me when I went to Cape Verde. This picture here is a picture of Pa Bulu when he was a young man. And
your grandfather,
who is that owns the farm in Duxbury, Domingo Pina Bulu, our grandfather. And then over here, this man here, I don't know who he is.
Did anybody know?
And nobody in the family knows who that is. And so I was talking to Auntie Mary, and I said, "Gee, I wonder." I don't know who he is. He looked a lot younger than Pa Bulu, so I'm not sure who that is.
Who is this man, y'all? Can you find him? Is he related some way, somehow? Because somebody knows him. And in this picture, I see Uncle Georgie.
In Donna's face?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But anyways, you see that picture, and then if you would put Uncle Gusto's picture up, it was interesting when I met him, and I could see so much of Pa Bulu in him. His ears were like Pa Bulu's, and even his hands, the shape of his hands, you know, was like Uncle Georgie's hands, or even you know, I just knew that there was that family resemblance there.
And that is the blue shirt, right?
Yes.
Blue shirt. And who is this again?
That is Pa Bulu's youngest sister's son.
Youngest sister's son.
Yeah. So
So our generation, he's a cousin.
He's a cousin. Yeah.
He's a cousin.
So our grandfather was his uncle.
And his wife?
His wife, I don't know too much about her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at him.
But look at the Bulu. You can see the nose.
Mhm.
You see the
Ears.
You see the
Hair.
hands, the hands, the hair. It's got that shocking gray hair. And even the other three, when you saw the four cousins all together, they're all in their 60s or younger, and they
Are fully gray.
Yes. So that's a definite trait there. What I did find out is that they still, talking about the family in Fogo, the Pina Bulu family in Fogo, they still own the land and the houses. So they call it Cecilia's house. So Pa Bulu's mother's house is still standing, if you can imagine.
Do you have pictures?
I don't have pictures. I do have to ask Cousin Nicholas if he can send us pictures.
Yes,
he
please.
Did send me pictures of his mother's house. Her name was Olivia. They still have her house in the family. So, and they do live very, very close, almost like growing up in Duxbury on, what's the name of that? Franklin Street, where all the Cape Verdeans live. It's just like that, where the families live not too far from one another. And they tend to hold on to their properties. So I thought that was wonderful to know that history.
So do we have any land over there that's still in family land?
Yes, because it's the house, they still own the house, they still own the land. So the land, yes.
Can we go build?
No, it's not ours. I mean, obviously the family there owns the property, they maintain the property, but just for the fact that over all of these years, they still have their homesteads, which is pretty amazing.
And what is the name of the town?
Cutello. Cutelo. Cutello, Fogo. And so they are a distance from the volcano. As I had talked about earlier, is that Fogo means island of fire. And so there is an active volcano on the island of Fogo. But they're probably about, it's probably about an hour's drive from where our family is from.
Okay.
So they're not right. They're not too close to the volcano.
And we're not far from the beach at all.
No, they're not. Oh, they're not far from the beach at all. San Felipe is the main town, or is actually the capital of Fogo. And they're about, like I said, 20 minutes from San Felipe, and that's right where the ocean is in San Felipe. Yeah. So talking to Cousin Nicholas, he actually walked to school. He had to walk to school, and the school was in San Felipe. So he had to walk into the main town to go to school. So if it's like a 20-minute drive, I can only imagine how long it took to walk to school every day. Yeah. And then just to give a little history, as I had said, that the Cape Verde Islands in the early 1900s did suffer a lot of drought. And so many people had to leave the island just in order to survive, because otherwise they were starving. And so a lot of the family that stayed in Cape Verde had to leave the island. So some of our family actually moved to Angola. So talking to Cousin Gusto, the older man that I said I had met down in Rhode Island, he ended up raising his family in Angola because of the drought that was hitting Cape Verde. But he is now living on the main island of Santiago.
How is it driving there?
Oh, they've got the infrastructure is getting better, so they have nice paved roads. Most of the main roads are paved. Once you get off the main road, you've got just those dirt roads leading into different communities. So it reminded me of years ago when we go to Pa Bulu's house, and you had to go down the dirt road to get to the main house off the street. And as far as the food, I thought was really interesting. Yes, they eat cachoop. But jag for them, they don't eat jag like we eat. They eat more white rice than they do rice with beans and looser and things like that. So I'm not sure if it's just a way of when they moved to the U.S., it was a way of making food stretch a little more. I think for them to have linguiça over there, or even to get beans, was probably not as easy to get. So they didn't do that jag the way we do it here in the U.S. So some of the food I thought was different.
And it's a desert over there, correct?
When it rains, a lot of when they have the drought, it's very dry. But when it rains, it's beautifully lush. And right now they're having a nice rainy season, so everything is green. Hence the name for Cape Verde means
Green Island.
Or the Cape of Green. So that's the history of Pa Bulu's family in Cape Verde. Do you have any questions? We went over all of the family members. So just a recap of all of Detta's brothers and sisters. His one sister, Anna, who married a Perry, she moved to Duxbury, raised her family. She had one daughter. Her name was Cecilia. And then his brother, who was a twin, his brother Norad, moved to Connecticut. And then his other brother that I located was called Francisco. He did come to the U.S. I'm not sure he ever went back. But the rest of his siblings stayed. So we do have a lot of family in Cape Verde. And they are between the island of Fogo and the main island of Santiago. And they're in the city of Praia, which is the capital of Santiago. So for those of you that would like to go and visit Cape Verde, you at least now have a point of reference of where to go. And yes, the Pina Bulu name, there's a lot of Pina Bulus in Cape Verde. Now, granted, they always use multiple names, so some of them have dropped the Bulu name, they keep it in the middle of their name, but you'll be able to trace them back. And if they are part of the Bulu family, they do identify as Bulus.
That's so exciting.
Yes, I thought so too. I know the last time we spoke, when I went to ask where they thought the Bulu name came from, they did say it was a given name, so like a nickname. I do believe they said like Italian, it means bread. Bula means bread in Italy. They do believe that, from Cameroon, there is a
river.
No, it's actually
the people.
The Bulu people. There is also a Bulu language, so we could have been given that name based on
several things.
Those people, and I don't know if we resembled them or maybe it was our work ethic. But it'd be like Joe the Barber, Joe the Baker, and so they became known as Bulus. That's just a guesstimate of how we may have come across that name. And also in India, I think we did research on that the Bulu is also a name of endearment in some Indian cultures.
There's also the Bulu River in the Republic of Congo.
Okay, I hadn't heard that one. I have to say, when I first started researching, there was nothing on the internet about Bulu, and now you find there's
so much.
There seems to be more and more information out there. So as you do your research, if you do find something,
please share.
Share it on the Bulu page. Again, if there's any questions that you have about our family, you can post it on the Facebook page, and we'll try to get back to you when we do another video.
Yes, and the next video will be Ma Bulu.
Yes, we'll concentrate on Pablo's wife. Her name was Ana Diaz Fernandez, and we will meet her parents, her brothers, and her sisters. More of you will know her side of the family because they're here in the U.S. So we grew up knowing most of her family. So that'll be a fun journey.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? Believe it, we've only been here for 30 minutes, so we do have more time.
I am trying to. Well, is there any questions you have?
I know I asked, like, how did they meet? Because I know matchmakers were a thing back then. Like, even Auntie Rosalie talks about her having a matchmaker and Auntie Mary having a matchmaker. So,
yeah. As far as I know, again, just making a guess of it, it looks like Mabu, it was an arranged marriage. Mabu was at least 10 years older than she was, and she was in the Cape Verde Islands, and made that journey here to the U.S. And the main purpose for her coming was to be married. So I don't really know the connection of who arranged it, but I'm pretty sure it had to be through family members. And so I don't have that information.
have you been able to connect with anyone else that is also looking at the same genealogy? Because I know you currently have Ancestry.com. Have you met anyone that is interconnected or like there? Because it's like a tree, right? Anybody's leaves pass over into ours that you've been able to connect with?
It seems like the people who are doing the research are like in our family. So it's like Carol's got something up there. I think Carol's trying to build a tree. And I think there's some other family members on the Golem side. I think there's maybe one of Junior's children might be trying to do a tree.
But so, no one that we don't have direct contact with already.
No. It seems like every Bulu that I kind of peel the onion back is directly related to us.
Any Fernandez?
Not that I've identified that have built trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, cousins, where are you?
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of taking what little bit of information in building the trees, but I again, that's why I had to go to Cape Verde, because to actually get the family beyond the U.S., I had to go to Cape Verde. And so it was really exciting when I was actually able to piece together, Pablo, and find that he had siblings. And
did you not know that before 2019?
No, all I knew is he had Auntie Emma, his sister, and his the twin. I knew he had twin brothers. Mm-hmm. Those were the only three that we knew of.
Did you ever know any of your uncles and aunts? Like how I know you, did you know your aunts and uncles?
The Pablo side?
Yeah.
I knew his sister, Auntie Anna, but
mm-hmm.
I was really young when she passed. And because she passed in 1960. I think she passed in 1960. I think she passed in like 1960, so I didn't really know her very well. And then I do remember the brother, Norad, because he would come and visit up until he was an older man, so I do remember him.
And that was Connecticut, right? He lived in Connecticut.
Yes. And, even talking to Auntie Mary and, some of the elders, they don't remember them talking about, the family in the old country. They call Cape Verde the old country. They don't remember, him, any conversation about his mother, his father, his brothers beyond the ones that were in the U.S.
Mm.
Yeah. And as far as we know, there were no correspondence, no letters. So so we don't really know.
That would be awesome if we could find some, though. Question is, would we be able to read the handwriting? Because barely nobody knows how to read cursive.
Well, everything's in Portuguese, so a lot of the documentation that I got had to be translated into English because it was all in Cape Verde. So all of the information I got for baptismal records, they didn't do birth certificates; they did baptismal records. All of that was in Portuguese. So I had it translated.
Oh, because Portuguese is the main language, and then Criollo is what you speak at home.
Yes. And it differs. The Creole language differs from island to island too. Yeah. So.
And even today, there's a lot of words that someone from Praia wouldn't understand someone from Fogo to say.
They can understand it, but it's still like a slang for them. So they each have their own dialect, but they can understand because it is very similar. It's an African dialect with Portuguese, so they figure it out.
What was your experience like? Like from getting off the first plane to get on a second plane, like how was that experience as a whole?
Yeah. Talking to our travel agent who is in Cape Verde, which was great. Her name is Jolie, and
that's the cousin, right?
No, she's just a Cape Verdean woman that has her own travel agency.
Who's the cousins that's over there? Or did I misunderstand Auntie Anna? And she was like, I thought she said that we had a cousin that owned a travel agency.
Oh,
no?
I don't know what she's referring to.
Okay,
but anyway, so she did tell me your best bet is to start in Lisbon to get an understanding of when you come to Cape Verde because of the colonialism. So I did go to Lisbon and we spent about 5 days there and got a feel for, because I had never been to Lisbon. So I did go there. When we got to Cape Verde, we landed in the island of Santiago, which is the largest of their islands and the capital. When we got to Praia, it was a rude awakening because going to Praia, you actually feel the difference. There's a strong African flair in Praia. And so, the look of the people, how they carry things on their heads, their manner of dress, you knew you were in Africa to me. And that was very different than what I had expected. But, very modern prior, for an African country is quite modern, the city. And transportation, was great. It was easy to get around the city of Praia. As we went into the countryside, that also was different to see. Everything was rural. Everything was, homes weren't on top of one another. It was like you drive for a while before you'd see another house. You'd see people walking down the street with donkeys, and they would be, picking up branches and so on and so forth. So it kind of put you back in time as you traveled more into the countryside. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful country to see. Then to hear the history of how how the Portuguese were trading African slaves, and you actually went down to that Senegal area where the slave ships came in and where they had the forts set up to protect the island. And you heard that history. That was pretty deep to actually walk among that and feel. You could feel the oppression in that area, and but it was good to have a better understanding, because as I was growing up, we just grew up knowing we were Portuguese, because at that point Cape Verde hadn't gotten their independence, because that didn't happen until 1975. So when I was growing up, we were all considered Portuguese.
And what did birth certificates look like for like your mom? Did it say that she was Portuguese?
They identified in some areas, they would identify that they were Portuguese, but they would actually identify them as being black, or they would actually identify them as being black or Negro, even though they were considered Portuguese as far as because of colonialism. Yeah.
And so, how about your journey to Fogo?
Then we got on a little puddle jumper. It was a little small prop plane, and it was only like a 20-minute plane ride to get to Fogo. And oh my goodness, it was absolutely beautiful, because you're just surrounded. Fogo is a very, very small island, and it's all surrounded by ocean. And so where we landed, it was close to the ocean. It was beautiful. We stayed in the downtown area of San Felipe. It was a really nice neighborhood. Houses were close together. They were just so friendly, so neighborly. Walking down the street, people would address you. And I knew a little bit of Creole, so I could at least talk a little bit. And then you would say who your family was, and naturally they would embrace you. And everybody had family in the U.S.
Of course.
You'd always find out they had family either in Dorchester or Brockton. That seems to be where most of the Cape Verdeans migrated to. It seems like they're mostly in Brockton and in Dorchester. I didn't meet that many people that were on the South Shore that they had family from, like Plymouth or Duxbury. It was really interesting. It seems like most of them migrated closer to Boston. A lot of families.
And how is the island differ? So you were on 2 separate islands.
Actually, we did go to 3, because we went to Saul, which is really considered a resort island. The island of Saul, beautiful beaches, and a lot of Europeans go to Saul, and they have an international airport there, so that's why a lot of people travel there. So Saul was beautiful. Again, just seeing a lot of fishing. They do a lot of fishing in Saul.
So maybe that's where a lot of New Bedford Cape Verdeans came in. All the
the whalers.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, that's another history I know down in
New Bedford.
In New Bedford, that a lot of Cape Verdeans did get picked up on those to work on those whaling ships. And when the whaling industry stopped, then the Cape Verdeans actually bought those ships. They were called packer ships, and they converted them to be able to transport people. And so a lot of Cape Verdeans.
That makes so much more sense why Anna's parents. So I'm thinking about how we are and what we do. And I can imagine like somebody had a ship and was trying to bring some cousins over and got turned right back around. I can imagine my great grandmother saying like, go get my parents.
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
That would be. I wish I could.
When we covered Anna.
I wish I could get a bigger picture or some type of what did their education look like when it came to?
They were educated. Looking at looking at Pa Bulu, it looks like they did not have a full education. talking to cousin Nicholas, who was raised, he was born in the 1950s, so that he was fully educated, went through high school and on to secondary school. And I have to say, for the family in Fogo, our family did pretty well economically and as far as further advancement. I do believe that one of Babu's brother, one of the twins' brothers, I heard that he worked in the post office on the island of Fogo. So they did have, jobs, or they were able to provide for themselves. And then the next generation, it looks like the next generation, they were able to do better for themselves also.
What does the religion look like?
Catholic. Yeah. The prominent religion, or the most popular religion in the Cape Verde Islands is
Catholicism.
And that's because of the Portuguese rule. Naturally, Europe, the European continent was mostly Catholics. They were all Christians. So the Christian religion was carried into a lot of the to the islands. Even when you go to I'm trying to think of like Brazil and some of the islands where they had slaves, they were actually that was their whole thought, was to convert the slaves before they even got to the Americas or to any of the islands.
But people had their names and had their beliefs prior to being stolen. So are there any remnants of, or has nothing else trickled down from the African?
That I'm not sure of. I don't really know if there's any true Africans where they carry on the African traditions. It seems like a lot of that was they influenced what they learned from the colonialism. But most of, I'll tell you, our family in Cape Verde, they were very, very strong and strict Catholics, even when they came here. Just to talk a little bit about Pa Bulu and his faith, I remember him. I mean, he went to church every Sunday. He walked to church, to Holy Family Church. That was our home church in Duxbury.
That was the same church that I had my catechism.
So Holy Family Church in Duxbury is still an active Catholic church. It's in a new building. It was actually closer to the beach when we were growing up. It was a tiny little church. But yeah, Pa Bulu went to church every Sunday.
Is it true he had a whole altar room?
Yes, and he had a room. Actually, it's that back room on the first floor, closest to the driveway.
The one with the picture window?
Well, there's no picture window there. Off the kitchen, there's, like, if you're facing the kitchen, looking at the driveway, it would be the bedrooms to the left.
Oh, Titi's room.
There's two bedrooms.
Yeah.
The one that's closest to the road.
To the road.
That was Mom and Pa's room. That used to be their bedroom when they were married, and then he turned that into. That was his room. Pa Bulu used to pray 3 times a day. He would pray in the morning before breakfast, or even before going out to do any of the farming. He would get up early, have his prayer time, and then when he came in for lunch, before he ate his lunch, he would go into his prayer room, have his prayer time, and he would do the same thing at dinner. So the women who cooked for him couldn't serve his food until he was finished praying. So it was always, he prepared his food around his prayer time. I remember growing up, and I'd go in the prayer room, and there was always holy water, because if you remember in the Catholic Church, before you entered the church, you had to dip your hand in the holy water and do the sign of the cross. And he had the same thing in his prayer room. So I would go in the prayer room and drink the holy water, figuring I was going to get cleansed inside and out. So I wanted to make sure I was covered. But yeah.
You've been covered since you were, look at you, Auntie.
I didn't even know. I Mhm. But yeah, so he always had a life of prayer, and then the custom um, was when you left his house, whenever we would leave, we would all gather. He had his chair. He was like the priest of the house, and he would have his chair, and we would all line up, and he would give us the blessings. Deus bacunos, Deus, which means God, ba means go, kunos means with you. And he would give us that blessing, and he would take it, we'd take his hand, and he'd do our hand with his, and he would do the sign of the cross. And that's how you would greet, that's how you would leave the house. You would not leave the house until he gave you the blessing. And that was from the oldest to the youngest. And we did that for as long as I can remember, even as an adult, when I would visit him. It was to get the blessing.
And this was every day.
Well, whenever we went to visit, not that, we went to visit.
I know, because it was a different time. You just
Yeah.
didn't show up at people's houses in the middle of the day. It was something that was like planned for.
No, back then it was more of a drop-in situation. It was quite different. You never had an invite. The doors were always open, and there was always food on the table. The tradition of the Cape Verdeans, even today when you go to Cape Verde, they always have food. They have a pot of food waiting. That's what they get up in the morning. Even my grandmother, my father's mother, up until she passed, she always had a pot of food. She'd get up in the morning and she'd cook this big meal. And I'm like, who's coming? Oh, you don't, so-and-so might drop by, this one might drop by. You always had food, because that's just the way that the Cape Verdeans, they're very welcoming. And what little they have, they share, So what little food they had, they made you some kind of a meal, so you would have something.
So Cape Verdeans here in America are very much strong in the traditions and the religion and like just the day-to-day life. A lot of them lived there and then came to the U.S. One of the customs that I recently learned was death. When someone dies, you wear all black for like 3 months. You stay in the house for 3 months. You don't go anywhere. Everybody comes to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so was that anything that you experienced as a child?
Yes, I have to say, when Ma Bulu died, as I said, I was like 5 or 6 years old. She was the only one that was my first experience with death. And when she died, they had the wake at the house. So what was that front room where the picture window was?
Mm-hmm.
That was the dining room when I was growing up. And they cleared that room, and that's where they laid her.
Did it always have 2 entrances?
Yes. That's where they laid, that where the coffin was there. And this wake lasted for 3 days. And it was 24/7. People were constantly coming to the house, leaving, coming, leaving, coming. Food was always being served. There was always pot of conch. That's why we associate conch with wakes, because they would make a pot of something. It'd be a pot of cachupa or conch, which is chicken soup. And that's what the people would eat as they would come. So there was always something, because they'd be there for hours, days. Some people just didn't leave. So that was my first experience. And I had something happen to me when I was, as I said, I was 5 when Ma Bulu died. When I was a baby, they had like 18-karat gold hoop earrings that they would pierce the baby girls with. And the earrings came from Cape Verde. And so I had those little hooped earrings in my ear. And during the wake, during these 3 days, one of my earrings was chewed. I don't know how, but my earring got chewed. And to this day, it's the weirdest thing. Like, what happened? I don't know.
Do you still have the earring?
No. No, I don't know what happened to that earring. But that was the most bizarre thing. But yeah, it was a very, very sad time, because Ma Bulu died suddenly. she died of a cerebral hemorrhage, and so she, I think, passed out. They took her to the hospital, and she never came home.
Was there like a book then? Sort of like when we go to funerals now, you like sign a book?
No, it wasn't that formal. It was basically people just came to the house and they viewed the body and they cried and they comforted the family.
I wonder, like, as far as that letter is concerned, because she still had brothers in Cape Verde, she still had family over there. Was there? We don't know of any letters that were sent back home, like Anna died.
Well, for Ma, most of her brothers were here. She was the only girl, and she had.
And it was her parents.
It was her parents, yeah. And I don't know when she died. They could have been dead by then.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably were, because in 1920 they were, or 1930 they were in their 70s. So they probably had passed. But she had, when she died, most of her brothers had died by then too. So.
Really?
She was the youngest. She was the youngest of 6.
And how old did she die?
She was 59 when she died.
And all her brothers had passed as well?
Then. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
but
so
on
that was
Pa's side, because Pa lived to be, what was it?
80s. He was I think he was well into his 80s when he passed.
Yeah, and Uncle Georgie and Auntie Frances, because I know Auntie Frances was over 80 when she passed. You remember how old Auntie May was?
Auntie May was, I think she had just hit 80.
She did have a birthday that year. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, my mother was 59 when she died. Uncle Joe died at 30. I think Uncle Joe was like in his 30s or 40s, so he died very young.
But that was more so due to his condition, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it was still unexpected. Yeah.
And with my grandmother, with your mom, that was like based on a condition.
Yes, she had cancer.
So aside from the conditions or the health issues, like longevity. Runs in the family.
Yes. And Geneva lived to be over 100 years old.
And she lived, she lived a real life. Was she good friends with Auntie Frances? Because I have a memory of her and Auntie Frances.
Geneva was a lot older than Auntie Frances, so but they were a big family, anyways. But we'll talk about the Fernandes because they're big, so we need to really delve into
a whole time frame with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we are coming up on an hour. I think I got a lot of soft questions answered. I think a lot of the other questions that I have are connected to our grandmother.
Yeah, we'll cover talking about Anna.
I'm excited for that day.
Yeah, and yeah, it'll be nice to look at that side of the family too.
And so for all of the cousins that are watching, thank you again for our second episode, and stay tuned for our third. Anything you want to add, Auntie?
No. Stay tuned. Send your questions.
Yes.
We'd love to hear from you. God bless.